Gemma, thanks very much for talking to us today about Washback, a really interesting area of assessment literacy.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Can you tell us just an overview, in simple terms, what is Washback?
Sure, of course. Washback is an academic term coined to represent the impact or the influence on the classroom or learning specifically from a test. So when a test is implemented into a school or a classroom, then inevitably there will be a change in the teaching and the learning, or perhaps not.
Why do you think there might be a change in the teaching?
Well, these days teachers are quite concerned about tests for good reason, and students as well. This could determine whether they go on to the next class or perhaps outside of a school, whether they get a job or get into a university. So it can have a strong impact on their lives.
I suppose, and in many cases, teachers are also judged, their performance is judged by their students' outcome on tests. So teachers might work towards a test, perhaps sometimes more than towards a curriculum, if they think that the test results will be perhaps quite important, not just for the students, but for them.
Yes, very, very true. Good point. Washback can be divided into positive and negative washback. And positive washback is what the test policy makers intended, what the test itself was implemented to do. For example, if a speaking test is designed and added into the curriculum, then hopefully the students and the teacher will focus a bit more on speaking in the classroom. That would be positive washback. On the other hand, if only a speaking test is implemented, or perhaps reading and writing because speaking just isn't practical, then perhaps those skills might be ignored in the classroom. And that could be considered negative washback to learning.
All right. Just thinking a bit more about the overview before we go into a bit more detail about positive and negative washback. You mentioned that washback is generally about testing. Think about national tests or other kinds of maybe school tests. Could we say that the ideas behind, or the idea of washback is equally applicable to formative assessment in a classroom as much as summative assessment, like those? For summative assessment, for example, being the national tests, end of year tests, and the formative assessment being the kind of in-class tests that the teachers do to monitor a student's progress.
Absolutely. I think most washback studies are more concerned with the summative tests, the external tests, because teachers are less involved generally. So the teachers are handed the test and then we see how they react. But if you want to look at washback in the classroom with formative testing, then you'll see the teachers are much more aware of why why they have created this test, and they have the intentions behind the test, so they're probably more liable to actually have positive washback.
Right, so essentially they're creating the test, they understand the test, and really this is part of what this area of assessment literacy is all about.
Yes.
Understanding the test, knowing why it exists and how it's being marked and all that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you mentioned about positive and negative washback earlier. Let's talk a little bit about positive washback now. Can you give me some examples, maybe of tests or situations which show positive washback or would have positive washback?
Sure. Well, right now the communicative method, the communicative teaching is very popular. It's being encouraged in most language classrooms. And that focuses on authentic tasks, authentic texts, and on interaction. So a good example of a test that has positive washback is our GESE exam, the Trinity graded exam for spoken English. And this involves prompts that then encourage an interaction that isn't scripted.
Mhm.
So there's no way to memorize a speech for this test. The students don't know what prompt or what topic they'll be talking about, and therefore they can't memorize something and come in with a rehearsed speech. It's very natural, authentic interaction.
So much, I suppose, for the purpose of a communicative approach to teaching, then much as you can't script what's going to happen in your day-to-day interaction, you can anticipate roughly. So if I go into a supermarket, I can anticipate the kind of things I might have to say if I'm asking for something or if I'm at the checkout. So I've got a rough idea. That's something that Jessie will do, the rough topic headings. But actually, I can't really memorize stuff. So in that way, the test is reflecting real life, and that would be an example of positive washback, that you're helping students with something that's in real life. Okay, and I suppose if we were to look at something like a grammar translation approach, or approach to teaching, a grammar translation test, which focuses on written translation, then you get the situation where people can't speak, but they can write perfectly, you can translate, but they can't speak. And if the outcome is spoken language, then we're saying that's negative washback.
Yes.
But if the outcome were to be translation only, then it would be positive washback.
Yes, if that's your day-to-day workload translation, then perhaps that would be helpful for you.
So we might say that positive washback perhaps depends on the overarching assessment methodology and what the test designers are looking for.
What the intention is.
Okay,
yes.
Brilliant. Could you tell us a little bit more about negative washback?
Well, negative washback tends to take the focus of the learning in the classroom away from learning and more on the tests and test preparation. Some test preparation is normal in a classroom and it's needed, of course, but if it's taking up that precious class time that you want the students to be interacting and learning new vocabulary, to just rehearsing and practicing mock tests, going over samples and memorizing speeches, etc., then that would be negative. Or perhaps they're ignoring some skills like speaking or like writing that, of course, you would want a good language learning classroom to use all 4 skills.
Okay, and you mentioned language learning a couple of times, but I guess the ideas of washback is not limited to just language learning, but just pretty much any tests. It's not just a language-specific thing.
Any test, any subject. Yeah.
So any test, any subject, where the resulting classroom time or efforts in the classroom, or basically the result, the effect of the test.
Learning, yes.
The learning.
It can be inside or outside a classroom.
Okay. All right. You mentioned resources there. Let's talk a little bit about resources. And it seems to me that if we're going to support teachers, then we need to help them with resources to ensure positive washback.
Absolutely. So the first resource is probably just information about the test itself, what the format is, what's the marking criteria, how will it be marked, which bits of the test are most important, and show some examples of this. How will the test run? How will the examiner take responsibility for if it's a speaking test, or is it multiple choice? They need to be familiar with the format.
Okay, Gemma, that's very helpful. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Okay.